in three stages how I saw the
I think we've lost Cas. So I'm like, Arsalan, I'd like to, jump back to you, and hopefully, Cas will be able to join us. So Arsalan, you do understand. Arsalan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm very much here.
Okay, fine. So you do understand that in the local market, okay, we've always been kind of hesitant in collaboration or collaborating with other organizations. Right, and unfortunately, in Pakistan, that's a dilemma that each one of us actually goes through every day. So from your experience, which is quite vast, spread over 2 decades, in terms of the consumer or retail industry, what impact has IT, digital technologies, including business innovation, entrepreneurship,
Miqdad, Cas is back. Would you want him to continue?
Yes. Welcome back, Cas. So Cas, we lost you. We lost you midway.
I was just saying how technology has really moved on, and then I was, and then the connection went. Something was happening in the background with my Zoom.
I'm so happy that this is just not a dilemma that we face here in Pakistan. It's world over, right?
It's the real world we live in, unfortunately. I think my Zoom started to update or something. So apologies for that.
That's Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law.
So hopefully you can hear me now.
So Cas, go on. Cas, go on.
So the 3 stages that I see technology has moved in is based around the first generation, which was Web 1.0, where just after the .com bubble burst, where people were kind of really looking at this thing called the internet and how this can really change our lives, and that's really that was things like lastminute.com. I don't know if it's a global brand, and you saw Amazon coming into the market at that period, and how things were changing. And Amazon back then was just selling books. And now it's gone into so many different arenas. So you had big organizations like that coming into the marketplace, and we as kind of technologists and software developers were wondering what this thing can do for us. And it's really gathered momentum. And the second phase was Web 2.0, where people were talking about how Web 2.0 can really interact with you as a person, and how you can buy things online. And that was very a linear process. And then the second phase that I've seen is, as this has been driven much by the millennials.
Adil, आप please अपने आप को mute कर दें. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry.
Really driven by the millennial generation that's come through, that really understand around social media and how communities interact, and how brand is so important, and how ethical brands are so important. And we're seeing a real shift in the way consumers are buying products. And these 2 things that we really see here and globally is how people want their product. They want personalization and customization. What that means is, I want my product at my convenience, at my time, in the way that I want to consume it. So now staying at home waiting for a parcel is inconvenient. So literally around the corner from my house, you've got lockers, so people can go and get their product whenever they want. They've got timings of when their product's going to be delivered, how long it's going to take. So we're right at the start of this whole rich environment of how products are going to be consumed by us, and it's happening quite a lot. So as in the B2B space, what we're doing is we're taking those experiences of business to consumer, i.e. me as a consumer wanting my product, into the workplace. So now that those digital habits are now being taken into the workplace. So we're seeing many what I would call direct-to-consumer brands, manufacturers going direct-to-consumer, that are cutting out the middleman and building their product directly to the consumer, because they see that there's more margin in that, there's more speed, and there's more flexibility for D2C brands. And we as consumers are taking those habits into the workplace, and we want our experiences from a business to business perspective to be like consumers. So we're seeing a huge shift in attitudes in businesses, whereas businesses were they would be comfortable if things weren't going right in the digital space. They're no longer comfortable now. So we're seeing real urgency in the speed of technology. Over the last 5 years, the speed has been absolutely phenomenal in terms of the acceleration. And now the next phase is about immersive experiences, where you can immerse yourself into one-to-one kind of relationships with the brands that you really want to interact with. So, for example, if you want to buy a pair of shoes, but you physically can't get to the shoe shop, or you want to try it on before you even buy it, there'll be these immersive experiences that we're seeing, particularly in e-commerce, where you can then interact in the metaverse that Facebook have kind of been talking about just recently, where you can interact and take those consumer products and try them on and see how they fit, and have a one-to-one relationship with the salesperson. And that's how consumers are now demanding their products. So we've gone from a shift from so we're taking B2B, B2C experiences into B2B environment. And this thing about customization and personalization is going to be very, very high on the agenda, and because we want products when we want them in the way that we want them. And that's what we're seeing across the globe now.
Wonderful, Cas. And I'm quite sure, Shayan, Mahnoor, Arsalan, with the, connections that they have here in the local industry, both from an e-com space and the retail space, I'm quite sure they too, besides our audience, learned something from what you just shared. Arsalan, let's jump back to you. So we were discussing collaboration, right? When Cas kind of, went offline for a bit. And we do understand that that is a challenge that we face in the local market. So from your experience, you think that the digital world has actually kind of facilitated this, act as a mediator where people who did not used to speak, do speak today? Or is it just like, because my operations are linked to yours, so let's just talk and get it over with? So what do you think, basically, from your viewpoint?
So there is this concept of whether I want to compete or can you hear me? I can't hear you. You're mute. Yeah. Okay.
Go on.
So there's this concept of competition versus cooperation, and we as a company always look at competition as cooperation. With a very simple reason for that. Look, there are two things about technology which we've all learned. One, the life of technology is very, very short. Everything changes, right? And changes very fast. Two, you can't do everything yourself. So these are two things that we've all learned as lessons through our journeys. And if you put them both in front of you, you will realize that there is no other way but to synergize, but to collaborate. If you want to really, really create value for the industry, right? I'll tell you from my own experience. We have a product called Omni Connect, which basically is an order management system for e-commerce players, for large-scale e-commerce players. Now, when we set out to build that product, we looked around and saw who was doing similar stuff and what was the gap. We identified a gap, but then there were many solutions which were doing which were addressing part of the problem. So instead of saying that, okay, I'm going to do it all by myself and I'm going to do it better than everybody else, I said, why don't we ask to collaborate with those who are addressing parts of that problem and get their best, bits, and whatever gap is left, we work on that only. So what happened was we got to focus on the gap which was really there, which nobody else was being able to address. And to answer your question about how technology helps, because this is an API world that we live in, everything is API enabled. we were able to collaborate and build a solution based on APIs, talking to other players very easily and very quickly. And then comes the pandemic. We were already on this thought train, but then comes the pandemic, and suddenly all technology players, the biggest resource they didn't have anymore was time, because everybody wanted a solution very, very fast. So had we not been in this collaborative mode already, we would not have been able to deliver a solution to the industry as fast as we actually were. So it's the thing about the mindset, as well as, yes, technology where it is today plays a huge role. And if you take a look at this in a slightly more simpler, naive manner, what do? You don't build your own telephones. You don't build your own 3G network, 4G network. You collaborate, right? You cannot have a life without a mobile phone anymore, or a mobile connection anymore, right? None of us can, and so it's a part of our lives. But in doing so, we are collaborating with a player who's a master of that. The same concept has to be applied to your work, to your business, to your industry. That's what I think. Yes, there is a bit of a reluctance still, but I think if we set good examples, people can follow them, and sort of get onto this, follow this path as well.
Wonderful. Fingers crossed. So Shayan, from I'm like in advertisement, branding, marketing, everything that you do basically, where what you pitch is right down to the end consumer, right? So whether it is branding or the advertisements that you do, or whether what comes basically in digital print, how has the ecosystem, I mean, like helped you, or what are the challenges that you feel still exist in the digital entrepreneur ecosystem?
I think the digital entrepreneurship sort of ecosystem has changed so much. Like my colleague said, from their time to today, it's a completely different world. And you see that at all levels. At the very top, you see large scale organizations, our clients, for example, like Cheetah or Priceoy or other, companies that are raising funding and trying to like create something slightly larger. Then you see it on the smaller scale with the, we have a client like, for example, called Sveston, which has been selling watches for a long time, but they brought it online, and then that completely changed their sort of ethos. But then you even see it at much, much, much lower levels. For example, in Sialkot, I was at our office once, and I saw this 18-year-old boy come in, and he got a Alibaba membership, and then he went door to door to different factories, got good rates, and started his business. A few months later, I was told that he's doing $100,000, $200,000 a year revenue, and this is a 19-year-old boy on a CD70 bike, changing his life because of the internet. And same goes for example, some clients on Amazon who are doing product hunting in Pakistan, business process outsourcing. You see so many people, they start as freelancers on Fiverr or Upwork, and from there they build clientele, and then they build businesses, and then they're building, the economy slowly. So what you're seeing is a very different world right now, where, for example, doing outsourced e-commerce work for Eastern Europe through Icon 7, where with pro-Pakistani, you see startups that are changing or sort of disrupting all sorts of industry, and whether that's agri-tech or prop tech or something along those lines. But what you do see is there's all sorts of businesses that have a different life cycle because of the internet, and because of the funding related to the internet as well. So, I mean, I don't think we ever had zero revenue companies before raising millions of dollars. This is a very different world. You're looking to solve problems more than you're looking to, create profit in the beginning. Some of those things might be, problematic in the future, but they do have value for the entrepreneurs now. And the biggest change, I think, for anyone starting out now is the barriers to entry have never been lower. You can literally, if you have a laptop, become a freelancer. You can hunt for products on Amazon and sell them that way. You can, like I said, you can buy an Alibaba membership and trade across the world. So what you're seeing is people like my partner, for example, in Pro Pakistani, the founder Amir, who started with a laptop in his university classes and then dropped out from there to sort of build a company with 60, 70 employees and, offices across Pakistan. You see the advantages of the internet. Of course, there are disadvantages, and people can sort of talk about how it's taking away certain jobs and stuff, and that might be true. But it's also, allowing a lot of people who may not have had the opportunity. Publishing, for example, journalism was very hard to get into before the internet. A lot of other things, advertising, you can get into it with a couple of designers, and you go on to Freelancer, or you go on to some sort of Fiverr type of website, and you can start from there. So what it does is it sort of levels the playing field a little bit for the little guy, and I think that's great, and that's very positive.
Brilliant, Shayan. And Mahnoor, Cas, I'm like, before I jump back to you, and I will pick your brain around technologies such as AI, ML, and how it actually leverages on the immersive experience that a customer has. Just one question from Mahnoor, and in continuation to what Shayan just said. So Shayan spoke about freelancers, and beside the regulatory challenges that we still have existent within the country, I come from a company that's called Convo. We help communication, collaboration across enterprises. But of late, what we've seen is that there's been a boom in people wanting to communicate internally and externally within the startups and the SME industries. So Mahnoor, from your experience, how has that been? Especially because you spoke about cloud a lot, right, in your intro.
Yeah.
So please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Miqdad right now, currently what is happening in the ecosystem really is around using the internet as a backbone, and then stemming off that in terms of collaboration, connectivity and working together really. So actually, I'm quite familiar with Convo as well. We were looking to sort of work together on that front. So again, the collaboration aspect has been brilliant to see, because essentially when I was listening to my colleagues speak about times 20 years ago, a lot of things which are now taken for granted were perhaps very difficult to have at that point. So we've actually had that luxury of having very low barriers to entry, as Shayan also mentioned. And that in itself has enabled a lot of cross collaboration, a lot of communication. And, for us specifically, being a telecom provider, we've seen that shift over the years as well. So, Redtone being an LDI in Pakistan since 2004 really saw what conventional connectivity and communication really looked like. And from that point on, you've had so many collaboration tools that have come into play that you realize that the market is completely shifted, that you realize that collaboration has really become the key to digitization. And based on that, I feel like a lot of startups have found it a lot easier to kind of, pick up a laptop, go online and start. Whether it's in freelancing, whether it's, using that freelancing as a base and then stemming into something much bigger, where you can set up organizations within minutes really, and then look to expand them. And then so I think someone very rightfully mentioned that, zero revenue company is doing really well now in terms of fundraising, because I feel the biggest challenge for a lot of companies and organizations in the country was really around funding. And that in itself now is no longer much of a challenge, right? Because you're having the likes of some of the largest VCs across the world investing in your market and believing that the products that we as local Pakistani companies are able to build is something that can really transform a greenfield market like our country. Yes, there are regulatory challenges, as you also very rightfully mentioned. I mean, I come from a company which has, yes, a very strong, regulator, which also has a mandate. And to work alongside those regulations can sometimes, for a lot of startups, be a little difficult, because you are trying to be disruptive and you're trying to disrupt the narrative. And to have to work within boundaries and limitations that can come up with regulations can be a challenge. But then again, my own background is law. I am a barrister by profession as well. So I understand that those limitations are sometimes essential as well, right? So it's just finding that fine line between being a strict regulator or having, difficulty with regulations, and then also trying to push through those barriers and trying to, reason your way through with the regulator to show as to why, this sort of disruption is required nowadays. And I mean, if I talk about connectivity, which has really grown over the years. Now, whether it was something, internet not being the luxury that it is today, even now you see a lot of difficulty in a lot of your underserved areas across the country, which is quite massive as well, because Pakistan in terms of a landscape is quite diverse. The topography is diverse, and sometimes it's not easy to reach through, that kind of penetration that you want to give across the country. So fiber-like connectivity is something which, yes, a lot of companies, including us, are investing in and have been investing in. But then again, you have the likes of low orbit satellite coming in. We've partnered with OneWeb, looking to bring them in. That is going to perhaps be a bit of a challenge from a regulator standpoint. But then again, I think a lot of companies are really challenging notions in a very positive manner. And I think a lot of regulators within the public sector are taking it really well as well. So it's about finding that right balance and to really adopt where the ecosystem in terms of the digital ecosystem is going. And it's going to be a very positive, I think, play in the next couple of years as well within Pakistan. And of course, globally, we're already seeing it.
So I would like to stay in touch with you on the low orbit satellites because we've been associated with them in the past. So I'll remain in touch with you. So Cas, coming back to you. So you spoke about immersive, right? You spoke about experience, convenience, a host of other things. How do you think that, like technologies such as AI, machine learning, process automation, workflows, these digital technologies can improve performance of the entrepreneurship process when it comes to factors such as time to market, robustness of ideas, product innovation, loyalty, so amongst others. So just your 2 bits on that.
First and foremost, I'll be quite frank and honest with you, it's not my area of expertise. The market is moving so quickly that someone that's archaic as me still has to learn these new things. Or at least understand that we need to have people around us that understand these kind of things, and that's, I think, as an entrepreneur, that's the first thing that you learn. Comes back to the collaboration thing. Both people are talking about collaboration externally, but also collaboration internally as well, which you kind of touched upon. And I think one of the key strengths of I'll come back to your question in a second, is one of the key strengths that I think as entrepreneurs and leaders of business and commerce is to understand what your strengths are, and then surround yourself with people that have better skills than you in certain areas. That's collaboration in itself, and collaboration is definitely a mindset. I think in terms of your question around AI and immersive experiences, I think from a consumer perspective, the whole basis around this drive has been around the thing of personalization and customization, which I touched upon earlier. We want things now the way we want them. No longer can brands dictate to us what we should be having. I want my personal needs as an individual met, where I eat, where I go on holiday, where I take my children, how I spend my leisure time, and brands that are really understanding this, particularly on a global basis, really individually are marketing to that individual the things that they want in the time that they want. And I think particularly around AI, proof of concepts, that kind of thing, entrepreneurs can really understand and look at technologies that are available to them to spin out ideas very, very quickly. The immersive experience is not new. Facebook have launched this metaverse, and they're talking about immersive experiences. Well, in 2010, we had this thing called Second Life. I don't know if you know about this, but it's where brands, you could really go into an immersive experience where brands would have shops. You could buy individuals in that universe. So you could buy a character. Now they're called NFTs. But more so, you'll be finding is as and when these e-com experiences really get deeper, what you'll find is you'll be able to sit at home, and if you like your favorite football team or favorite soccer team, you may call it in Pakistan, that you can put a headset on.
No, we call it football, by the way.
Yeah, that's good. I'm really happy. I'm really pleased that you call it that. So you could sit in your living room, put on a headset, and you could actually be at the match. And what that opens up a real global market in terms of in this example, ticketing sales, you could have, people all around the world buying season tickets for specific matches. Just recently, and I'm like probably many of you are, I'm a massive, huge cricket fan. I'm very disappointed we didn't get to the final and win. But just imagine being sat in Dubai in the stadium with the crowd around you, watching the match right in front of you and interacting with the people around you. These are the kind of experiences that we are going to be seeing in the next, it's literally around the corner. These are the kind of things that we should be experiencing. And if we understand that this is coming, then we can then start to move our businesses into those directions and having those conversations with our customers and also with the people around you. So what it shapes is the people that you're going to have in your businesses now and the skills that you're going to need in the future, because not only will the consumers be demanding this, but also the customers will be demanding this kind of experience as well. And we're seeing that across the board, across many customers that they want their products and services to be served in a much interactive and immersive way. And that's a challenge for us because we need the skills. There's a massive skills shortage around the globe. And I think one of the things that we'll be looking at, and we have a base in Karachi as well. So one of the things that we'll be looking at is looking at to upskill our current members of staff into looking at some of these disruptive type of technologies. And it's a challenge for me. I'm not young anymore, but I understand that this is coming. So the big thing is for me to understand that it's coming and have the right people around me.
So coming from a Karachiite, I'm so glad that you are, looking at it, at the end of the day, we are a population of 20 million here in Karachi. I'm quite sure you can help us upscale your operations in return. So thank you, Cas. Arsalan, I'd like to jump back to you and understand from you that when it comes to relevance of creating virtual spaces where trusted relationships support each other, not just in communication, like Cas said, internal and external, but really in basically formation of new ventures, how they share data, how they make transactions. How, from your perspective, how does that elaborate? Because I do understand that you're involved with ERPs as well.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so let me give you an example. Everybody's heard of Shopify, right? You want to sell something, you start selling online. What is this? It's a virtual relationship of two companies, your brand, your company, you've got stuff to sell, and a company that can take you to all your to your audience. That is Shopify, right? Few years ago, we didn't have this, right? Today we do. Tomorrow we'll have something else. Take another example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp is another example of a virtual space or a virtual relationship between you and a company called WhatsApp, or Facebook for that matter, or Meta for that matter, actually. But what does it enable you to do? So you see, the way the world is evolving, we used to have this term called global village. Nobody uses this term anymore because it's just so connected and virtual now. We probably spend half or more than half the day in a virtual space. This whole conference is happening virtually, right? You could say that a lot of that has been fueled by the pandemic, but I would say that pandemic has just really catalyzed it. It was already there. People were moving towards it. People were just not sure how good it would turn out, right? Look at Zoom. Zoom was a tool. People used it, but now almost everybody has an account, right? So my take on this would be that yes, these virtual spaces have evolved. They're important. They will continue to grow in shape and form and numbers, of course. As companies, from an internal process point of view, I have a customer who wanted to set up something for their accounting, and they do use these tier 1 ERPs, right? But for their new venture, they said, why not try something in cloud accounting? Again, another virtual relationship. We signed up for one particular cloud accounting system. The chart of accounts was already set up. They gave us a number of options. We picked one. We were good to go by the evening. Compare that with a typical ERP life cycle. You could not type in a single letter before the next few months, right? Similarly, when you talk about, somebody mentioned cloud computing and cloud centers, and look at all how AWS and GCP have shaped up. You want to set up a data center, you can probably have your servers up and ready in a few days, or sometimes in a few hours as well. Again, as compared to some years ago, you would build a room, you would put air conditioning, you would put cooling, you would put electricity, whatnot, UPS, etc. Then you would bring in racks and hardware and all of that. Where is all that capex? All that capex is gone. And look at the benefit. You actually get to spend efficiently in your OPEX, and you have greater reliability, you have greater security, you can spin up another server, you have more scalability. So I see that virtual spaces will continue to bring these advantages to businesses, and they will definitely disrupt the typical ERP stance that still many Pakistani companies do take. And the biggest threat that they will pose is to that mindset of the old and stubborn. Any of these larger systems which are still old and stubborn will have a very tough way up ahead, just like the likes of Nokia and Kodak did. Thank you.
Perfect. So before I wrap up with Mahnoor, I would like to pose a question basically first to Shayan and then to Cas. In terms of customer loyalty, so from a Pakistan perspective, Shayan, you do understand that brand stickiness is something that we've always struggled with, customer loyalty being another, but even more so quality of service. I mean, like that's always being a challenge that we have basically in the local market. I'm like, you fly 2 hours away to Dubai. There are consumer retail outlets who basically still give you an option to return what you basically bought, but no such, thing actually exists here. Now with people going onto e-commerce stores, okay, and doing such transactions.
I think we lost him.
I'm sorry, I got disconnected. Shayan, what did you hear and what did you not hear?
The last thing I heard was we were talking about brand stickiness, and then you were mentioning something about e-commerce.
Yeah. So what I said is that with e-commerce outlets, giving us the convenience part here in Pakistan, right? How do you think? From a digital perspective, right? Brand loyalty or customer loyalty has actually increased or maybe decreased, because more options have actually appeared.
Yeah, it becomes harder and harder when you go online because the options increase and you have an access to all the options. So sometimes you don't know, or perhaps you didn't know before the internet existed. You know, you couldn't find prices as easily, or you wouldn't know as much. As far as brand loyalty is concerned, or stickiness, it's sort of twofold. Of course, digitally you can sort of interact with your customers in a different way. You can build that loyalty for what you stand for and things along those lines. But at the end of the day, we have to improve our services. So that's something that is an inherent problem in any industry, in Pakistan specifically, and that's something that I think the newer generations are aware of. They're sort of trying to solve those problems. It's not as simple or easy because it's an ethos that's built over decades. there's a work ethic involved in that. There's a sort of understanding of different principles involved in that. So that's not going to be easy. And the digital world will just give you, the way I look at it is, it'll give you a, like, let's say that you have a nice shop in the mall. That does not mean you'll get the footfall, but that doesn't mean if your product isn't good or your services aren't up to par that you will necessarily get the business. So those are parts of even the businesses that I'm involved in that we're constantly struggling with and trying to improve, which is overall product quality, services, client relationships. These are things that, generally speaking, for a few years we've been struggling with in Pakistan, and across the board we've been struggling with in Pakistan. But I think I'm hopeful and I'm confident that the younger generations, younger than myself even, will do even more. And hopefully that'll start to turn, and we'll be able to give them the services required at any international scale. Because being digital is actually, it's worse, because if you're dealing with clients in the US, they have a understanding that they can go worldwide. They can go to India, they could go to Bangladesh, they can go anywhere. They can go to China, of course. So it's not going to be easier, it's going to be more difficult. And in that sense, we have to really up our game when it comes to quality and when it comes to services.
And I think we need to up our game basically around social media and how we actually use social media. So while, again, it has its pros,
of course,
there are a few cons that that we need to overcome.
Yeah, no, and it's very important in today's day and age. You can sort of interact with customers in such a different manner as before. Any sort of business can. In fact, I mean, the biggest example of this would be the rise of influencers. Influencers are celebrities without talent is the wrong word, but they're a different kind of celebrity. They're the new celebrity where their personality.
I just hope we don't have one of them here. I mean, I just hope we don't have one of them here. So
no, I have a lot of respect for them. Look, their personality is their talent, right? So you don't need to be a footballer anymore, or a musician. You can just, if you're charismatic and people like you, that's enough. But like I said, you can interact with them in any way. You can bring on a very solid audience, but you still have to deliver the product. And if you can't deliver, all the marketing and PR in the world can't save you.
Thank you, Shayan. Thank you so much. Cas, some question, and the same question to you, but more from a global perspective. So you've, I think, been there, done that, of what we basically speak in Pakistan, right? So we're still, like what Shayan said, struggling with consumer behavior, or how organizations or rather retail outlets actually treat consumers. You are a step ahead, basically, in the UK market. Right. So what are the challenges that you have there in the first world countries?
I haven't been there and done it. I'm still doing it. So, I think that I've done it. Yeah, I've done plenty of things, but I'm still doing it. So, but I think you probably there's a lot of thing going on about user experience, but the big thing around everything now is CX, which is customer experience, and that really is comes back to the central point I was making earlier. It's about customization and personalization, not just to buy my product, but also what happens after I buy my product. If I don't like it, can I send it back? How quickly can I do it? Can I do it in my own convenience? It's my daughter's birthday today, and her mum bought some Air Jordans, which are a big thing. Literally went on a exchange website, got the product. It's her birthday today. The product landed on Friday. The product is slightly big for her. So she's leaving to go to university this afternoon. On her way there, she'll be able to get a bag, put it in, send it back, and a new pair will arrive at her own convenience tomorrow or the day after. That's the kind of level of ease that we want as consumers. So the after sales process is part of the customer experience, and who's driven that is people like Amazon. I can order something now from Amazon and it will land this afternoon. If I use Prime, it will literally land this afternoon. If I don't like it, I can send it back. I don't have to drive to the mall. I don't have to drive through traffic. I can do it from a convenience and send it back from and all from my phone. You know, I'd have to log on. I do everything from my phone. It's that simple. So what we're seeing is that brands that really understand their customers make the process as frictionless as possible. And what that does, it builds brand loyalty, because it's very much a mindset approach to this. And we see it with probably some larger brands and some smaller brands that are using e-commerce, where their returns process is very difficult. And what you'll find is you'll get more customers leaving you to go to the brands that make it easy for you to return the product. Now, the mindset here of someone that's probably a little bit in the past is, I don't want to give that money back. But actually, what you're doing is you're building customer lifetime value, because that customer will come back to you over and over and over again. And we're in a world of social media where people recommend and go online quite quickly to give you a review or a bad review very, very quickly. They'll also go online and give you a really good review. And what that builds is not just customer lifetime value for you as the person, that you'll come back over and over again and buy that product from that brand, but what I will also do is recommend your brand to other people, saying, you know what, I bought this product, it didn't fit, I sent it back, it was so easy, they're a really good company to deal with. So that's what we're seeing, that this thing about CX, which is customer experience, not just about getting your product cheaper and faster to your consumer, but what happens post-sale. How do you look after that customer post-sale? And this mindset shift is really important for people in the Pakistan region, where actually the person that does it first, that really understands consumers, will corner the market. So if there's a brand right now, even if it's small brand, you might be a clothing brand, you might be selling wood artifacts, you might be selling furniture. If you have, and I'll give you an example, one of our customers is a startup business. They've gone from 0 to 20 million pounds in revenue in 2 years. And they sell beds and they sell bed furniture, which is really bulky items. If it's a small item, like a key or a phone, that's easy to return. But they've made it so easy for the consumer to return their products, even after they've used it, because they know that the review and the customer lifetime value of that customer is far valuable to them than by making it easy to send back a mattress which is worth £200 or £300. So it's a mindset shift of how you deal with the customer. And if you keep the customer central to everything, and all your digital points, make it easy for that customer to return their product, then you will win. You will win. You will absolutely win. And when we go and strategize with our e-com merchants about e-commerce and implementing e-commerce and re-platforming and all these things, one of the big things that we talk about is logistics and their returns policy. And you have people now dedicated in customer service, because here and in the US, a customer that returns a product is another sales opportunity. It's another sales opportunity because you're helping them. And the customers that you help returning the products are more likely to rebuy your product there and then. They're more open and susceptible to, okay, well, you didn't like that product. How about we offer you this? So now you've turned that returns scenario into a sales opportunity, and it really is a mindset shift. It doesn't matter what technology you have in place. You can have the best returns. You can have the most end-to-end, most disruptive e-commerce solution or e-business. If you don't deal with the people outside of the technology in the right way, then the technology is irrelevant.
Very true, and very insightful. Thank you, Cas. So, and I'm quite sure, I mean, like Shayan, Arsalan, Mahnoor, all of us will, I mean, like have basically a lot to go back to our customers with, I mean, like based on what Cas just shared. So Mahnoor, in order to conclude, so what I've basically heard here from the panel, SaaS, cloud, time to market, right? It has, I mean, like kind of, I mean, like bettered itself, mainly because of the pandemic and how it actually acted as a catalyst. There are certain, I mean, like, what do I say, industries, fintech, banks, even retail, manufacturing, who are still, I mean, like, what do I say, gung-ho over data residing outside of their server room, which they want to call a data center, right? How is Redtone, or what is Redtone basically doing in order to circumvent this? Because I heard you saying that you've teamed up with GCP. I heard Shayan say that, okay, for e-commerce perspective, but he's teamed up with Alibaba, Amazon. I heard Arsalan say that he's teamed up with an international provider when it comes to ERP. What are we doing locally? Because look, that mindset also exists. Besides the consumer mindset that Cas mentioned, there's a mindset in our investors where they don't want data outside of the country. And that's the challenge that we have. So we still have the likes of Rapid Compute, we have Multinet who have unlike data centers, ERPTCL. I think we need to better, right? So that one rack or one server that Arsalan mentioned would be up and running in 15 minutes. When is that really going to happen in Pakistan?
So I think, Miqdad, it currently is happening in Pakistan, but it is a change, which is a mindset change. And it's not just the mindset of the entrepreneur or the organization, it's also the mindset of the regulator. Because a lot of the challenges with data residing within Pakistan are actually stemming from the fact that it is a regulatory requirement for a lot of sectors, but we've seen a lot of regulators who are very conventional in their mindset change it over time, right? We've seen it with the banking industry, for example, who have really leaped forward in terms of allowing a lot of data to now reside on the cloud, which was monumental. Not just for the banking industry, but also for the likes of cloud service providers within the country, because now that opens up a lot of opportunities for CSPs as well, right? Now, if I talk about Redtone's own journey in the cloud space, so we've been in this space for the last couple of years, primarily in international cloud. And a lot of the prospects that we saw over the last 5-6 years was towards the deployment of private cloud. So as you mentioned that, setting up a couple of servers or racks within your own organization, your own office space and premises, and calling that a data center is something which a lot of organizations are very comfortable with, because they just felt that they had that ownership physically in their own premises, right? And that was again stemming from the idea of data security. But I think what we've seen over the last couple of years, even months, that data security is becoming a challenge day by day. And it isn't as simple as just residing or keeping that data within your own premises that is the solution. So that trust that has now come from the customers or from the organizations that we work with has been huge over the last couple of months, because that has allowed for providers like us to step in and to say that, we can enable you in going online or taking all of this information or this data online within minutes. So we can actually spin up a machine for you, and you can be with your data secure on the cloud in a couple of minutes time. Now, of course, there's a lot of companies, you mentioned a couple of them as well, whether it's Rapid Compute, Multinet, CubeAccess, PTCL, so many others, who have the option of you residing or keeping your data within Pakistan in a secure environment within their data centers as well. We offer that too through public cloud infrastructure as well, that they can keep their data within Pakistan. Now, the likes of Azure doing well in Pakistan, AWS, GCP, the reason they do well is because a lot of regulators have eased their regulations, and also the fact that a lot of organizations have now opened to the idea, of hosting their data internationally as well, and not as fixated around the idea of just keeping it within Pakistan. There's no harm in keeping data within the country, but there are also numerous advantages of taking your data outside, because it allows you to make use of technology which perhaps is still building in Pakistan, and allows you to process your data perhaps in a more optimum fashion and manner than you perhaps could do with just local providers alone. So it's always good to have a mix and match. So I think from a Redtone standpoint, from our standpoint, we are trying to encourage the customer to trust the process and to enable and to allow us to enable them with their journeys, because that just helps expedite and also helps them keep lean teams, and they don't need very sort of heavy infrastructure teams, because a lot of that is now outsourced to providers like us whose core expertise is around this space. So yeah, I mean, good shift coming about and interesting again. Let's see how it, propels forward.
Thank you so much, Mahnoor. So I'd like to conclude here. I think it was a highly insightful discussion, and I'm quite sure our diverse audience will have taken out something from it for them to actually engage better in the digital entrepreneurial ecosystem, as we call it. Thank you to each one of our panelists. I look forward to meeting you and learning more about what you do and how we could actually collaborate. I would like to wrap up the session now with a vote of thanks to the CXO Global Forum for including us within the Global Digital Summit, and hand it over to Saira Shazad now. Saira?
Thank you very much, everybody, for taking all the time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Saira?
Bye.
Saira, are you there?
Thank you very much, viewers and participants, to be a part of this Global Digital Summit 2021. Our next panel discussion will be on future of technology, which will start at 2 p.m. Till then, we will take a short break for namaz and lunch. So stay tuned with us. Thank you.